Thank you. I'm looking at about fourth or fifth page over the Medicaid, where it talks about the Medicaid commercial, weighted Medicaid averages, weighted QHP. You know, it really looks like our doctors and physicians and all those folks in that list are being paid far less than what happens in traditional Medicaid or in private insurance, correct?
That certainly is one of the findings, is that there is a differential in reimbursement rates between what, as an example, Blue Cross reimburses versus what Medicaid reimburses that same service.
Yeah, so it would seem based on that, we would put them all back into Medicaid.
Well, that's certainly something that I know has been considered in the past, and that's certainly something to look at in the future, you know, whether or not it makes sense to continue this program perhaps through an alternative vehicle.
Yeah, help me, explain to me why it isn't good if the relative difference is 108% in general surgery. Why, if that's correct, why wouldn't we have why do we ever move them?
Well, initially, and certainly I know there are other folks involved at the time, so I can give a little bit of background information, but you know, initially the goal was to be able to expand Medicaid, but to do so in a way that would support the marketplace in terms of being able to help do so through the qualified health plans, so it was not a traditional Medicaid expansion. Now, obviously, that's been several years ago, and I know that there's been lots of discussion since that time to say, do we need to consider going in a different direction? But I know at the time that was one of the key features that you know folks felt like was really important, was that if we were to expand Medicaid, that we weren't going to do it through the traditional program, that instead we were going to utilize the private sector and really you know, do that through the marketplace and using the qualified health plans. But like I said, that's definitely something that you know, has been an area of discussion, and I certainly foresee will continue as we get into the future.
So in that differential, let's take the one for general surgery. 52.74 versus 109, or the let's say $57 differential there. Who's the winner on that? I mean, is the Arkansas taxpayer saving that $57, or is that profit for the qualified health provider?
But again, when the program was set up at the time, you know, part of the test was to say, could you more effectively serve people and increase access if you utilize the private sector? And that was certainly, you know, some of the original, you know, tests of the waiver, if you will. You know, I think much as we're having discussions about savings and where we can reform the traditional Medicaid program, you know, certainly the same discussions and conversations need to be had about how do we have similar impacts within the expansion population.
So usually, you know, if you take money away on one side, you may be losing $57 on one, but you're going to be gaining $57 back because you're pushing it off over here. But I would assume that would be definable, and there would be a line item that shows us where we're gaining that back. How would you define the savings if there's an additional cost to the taxpayer of $57 every incident? How would you define specifically how we gain that back, as far as just straight cross loss?
No, and it's not so much, it's hard at the individual level in terms of looking at like the per service cost. I think this goes back to some of the discussion when Mr. Baird was here about, you know, through the private option to date, the state has realized savings in the folks from traditional Medicaid who has shifted over. You know, so where we were spending, for example, 70-30 on some of those populations, you know, we'll now be spending, you know, eventually 90-10. And so it's not so much on the per unit basis, but it's when you look at the population as a whole, that, you know, we have experienced some savings through the movement of those populations.
That would seem to be, one would be able to drill down to the definite cost there versus say, you know, maybe I don't understand it clearly enough, or maybe I'll ask DF&A how that would, I mean, can you define that clearly? Are those clearly defined, or is that just a global savings that we're having? I don't know the answer to that.